Hi there. Hi, Trevor.
Oh, that was slick. We're normally slicker than that, Angelique. When I'm muted and then you unmute me and I mute myself again because I'm trying to unmute myself, that's when it all goes wrong. So we shouldn't do that. That's learning. How are you
We,
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I saw the timer. We started with the timer a little bit like 1 minute too late. So people
Oh,
that still went for a quick coffee, you might find us already talking when you come back. But anyway, welcome by this week's Hello Monday live episode. My name is Angelique Slop, and welcome my co-host Trevor. Uh, and every week on Thursday, we talk about the future of work in broader sense of the world of the word. We see what is happening around. We translate that to organizational strategies. We look at the struggles and the challenges that we hear from our members and from our clients, and we share them with you. We also have regular guests. Please check out our YouTube page. What is the easiest way to find the past videos? Because we've got some really interesting conversations. And, especially love the one that you did with Magnus last week, Trevor, about kindness in the workplace. So today it's you and me, and we talk about new work, new technology. So also, people, it's interactive. If you have any questions, comments, remarks, just put them in the comments. Also, drop us a line. Say who you are, where you're from, and give
yeah.
us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in your part of the world. So I'm in Brazil. We have a youth party here that is called João João, which is officially tomorrow, but today already everything is already it's starting. So that's
Awesome.
an interesting thing happening. What's happening in England, except the midsummer?
Well, I mean, as you know, I mean, I've eaten it now, but yeah, it's the middle of summer, and I decided I was going to get an ice cream. I'm in a business centre, and they brought in an ice cream van. And of course, there's a running joke that in the UK, as soon as you decide to do something that relates to the weather will change on you. So they brought in an ice cream van, and now I've got miserable weather, and it's going to be hot. You know, earlier in the week, it's going to be hot later in the week. So this is the one day where it's not looking that warm. So that's just the curse, I think, of living in the UK.
Yeah, well, I'm from the Netherlands originally, so I can totally relate. Yeah.
Yeah, similar kind
So
of latitude. Yeah.
it's similar, yeah. Weather, sea climate, yeah. Love it. No, it's nice. It has the four seasons are also they have their charm, and I miss it a little bit because winter started
Yeah.
here, and it's just kind of like you're kind of like maybe I should wear a little bit of a vest in the evening, and or like on a rainy day, and that's basically the main difference. But anyway,
Yeah,
not to make you guys jealous. So
you are
hello
making
today.
lots of viewers jealous, I can tell.
Yeah, well, the today's topic: new ways, new work, new technology. I'm tripping over my own words here. So for the people that came to this event thinking we were explaining a set of tools and talking in depth about technology, we are not. Please, not today. We do have we organize some product demos. We do we bring together within Hello Monday Club as we think we are a knowledge hub and we bring some good solutions to our audience. But this is not what this LinkedIn Live today is about. If you're
No.
interested in that, make sure to either subscribe to the YouTube page or sign up on the website. Let me see. I should have a cool banner for us to. So here you can sign up for the
Nice.
Hello Monday Weekly, and you get everything in your straight in your mailbox as soon as we are having some great material about the best solutions out there. At least not the best, but solutions for the best kind of solutions for the problems that we think organizations will be facing in the future, and that we really came across in our years and say these are the solutions that we think are at least should be long listed, if not short listed, for any company on their HR agenda. Enough technology. What will we be talking about is the mindset and the organizational adaptation and organizational change and what we can do as leaders to stimulate that. And if you don't mind, I want to start with a little storytelling. So when I was in my early 20s, I was temping in a big insurance company slash bank. So it was financial services, and I was in a large I was being a secretary of the top executive team in this large executive company that was part of a banking concern, like huge, multinational. And there was email just was introduced, not just the day before, but just a few years ago, just a few years before. And what would happen is that the secretary, the PA, the personal assistant of the CEO of the banking concern, would send an email that would be received by my direct colleague, the personal assistant of our CEO. She would print it. She would take this email. She would put it on the desk of the CEO, because mind you, CEOs did not have personal computers, because the computer actually replaced the typing machine, and the typing machine obviously before that was not something that the CEO would ever touch in his life.
Right. Yeah.
He would take his pen, and probably in my memory it was like those kind of fancy pens with ink. I don't know what is the name. And then not an ordinary ballpoint, obviously. And he would bring it back she would pick it up again. He would write his answers. He would fax it back to the banking concern. And I was kind of looking at it and was like, there must be a more efficient way. I thought email was going to be, and she was in the 60s, and she was like so tech savvy. And she looked at me, Angelique, you can't learn old monkeys, old tricks. Never mind. And it is, and then we laugh about it. But I tell this story because this might be the case that the Generation Z that is coming up and that is just starting to work with you in your organization might look at your organization and the way you implement technology in this way. And two things to say. If you have probably that time, 95%, it's fair to say, everything was still like with normal mail and with fax, and email was of course not overnight replacing all the systems, because that's impossible, because the clients, like a lot of people wouldn't even have access to personal computers at that time. But it wasn't integrated, just put in top, and then there had to be all these workarounds to kind of make it happen. It's not the most efficient way. Of course, we've come a long way at one point, but I'm sure there's still a lot of people that are printing their emails, for example. It's an example a lot of people can relate to.
I'm sure.
And I don't want to count the times that I was talking to it's often governments, insurance companies, banks, where people would say, well, I would say, can you please send me by email to me instead of by normal mail? And then they would be like, unfortunately, and these are like often 23, 24, 25 years old people working on customer service, saying, unfortunately, we are not there yet. We cannot accommodate sending our correspondence by email yet. And I'm like, yeah, but we were kind of basically already using email before you were born. So
yeah,
what I want to say is the pace of companies adapting to technology. We might think we are very quick with it, but we aren't. So I don't know if you have any examples of.
Well, yeah, I mean, so a few things. I thought of a few things there. One was actually email's not even advanced technology, is it really? I mean, that's kind of bizarre that they haven't got an email option for their correspondence, because these days, messengers, whether it be like an online messenger or some other system, Slack channel, whatever, is a way that people stay in touch all the time, and it's really quick, and it's great for short messages, and it's accessible all the time. You can manage multiple channels, all that kind of stuff. I think there's something about the younger people coming through, and there's two things about that. One is we really need to listen to how they utilize technology, right? They are consumers of technology, and often I find there's this big dissonance between kind of consumer-focused technology, which is typically fast adoption, fast adaptation, and it tends to be really, really quick and super practical, and it's linked to the need, versus the way in which technology is used within companies, which is often quite archaic and is much slower to change, because we're looking at enterprise solutions, things like that. So I remember before, a few times in organizations, we'd get a young person in the team, a young person. This is since I've not been a young person. You get a young person in the team, you go, they're going to be brilliant at technology. And they are. So there's an element of we need to listen to people coming through and how they utilize technology. But they then are not good at using the technology you want them to use. So you then go, well, you're really good with tech, right? And they're kind of on their phone 24/7, and so you assume that. You go, well, can you now go and use, do a PowerPoint presentation? They do a PowerPoint presentation, it's awful. Or you ask them to go and do an Excel spreadsheet, and they don't know any of the functionality in Excel spreadsheet because A, it's not nearly as intuitive as what they're used to. B, you still have to learn technology. Like, you don't just install a chip because you're young, and then all of a sudden you can use any system. So I think there's something around that, and then there's also something about the kind of the fact that organisations, particularly large organisations, always lag behind what the current thing is. And I do think that gap is closing. The more we use software as a service, the more we're using cloud services, the more people are, companies are designing their software for interactability rather than standalone. They're protecting their IP. So there is, even now, Google Slides are much better than they were in converting Word documents and things like that. So there's a lot that is changing that will make that gap smaller, but that gap still exists, and we need to acknowledge that's the case.
Yeah, I think it's also like, obviously I've done a lot of startup mentoring, and in the last years I came across a lot of great solutions, often solutions that were developed by those startups themselves because they were doing some other job and then doing another startup, and then they came across a problem, so they started to develop their own solution, and those solutions are really, really great. The gap between corporate world and what I see in startup is huge, and also so I see some problems. Like, I think the thing is, it is the mindset around technology. So I still come across people that are not used to send an email, that prefer to go on the phone and make it very inefficient, and for them feels like email is not the right channel. That is a skill. It is training. These are people, we live in 2022. We are like, after 2 years, everybody working from home, and I still see also that behavior to always have the asynchronous way of thinking. So we can't be here together in the same office, so we hop on a video call. Whilst we can also send an email, or we can create a little video with the solutions that are out there that present the thing that we want to present, and send it by email, so we can go more asynchronous. And the mindset about using technology to make our work more efficient, our productivity higher, our well-being higher, and also just the adaptation to a new world of work and meeting the new generation halfway, then there needs to be a very intentional mindset around that. And and it's difficult for companies to make that adjustment, and in that sense I see the gap growing. So it might be that the gap between, like, the tech giants that we used to work with in technology, don't get me started about Microsoft, but compared to, like the great solutions that are out there, and that also even a lot of companies are reluctant to adapt to, because Microsoft, it's a monopoly that they have for like a lot of companies, because they feel so in terms of security, they feel so it's such a low risk solution that they will basically fall back to Microsoft and build like high walls around everything around their service. So not opening up to new technology that could be a way better, more cheaper solution. I worked in a very, very large company. We had a team of like 40 HR people, where we all had to do a lot of manual work. Then they had a survey. So there was an employee survey, like in this kind of like 50,000 employees. And we had to show this data for 50,000 employees. And for our own region, we had to do all these manual things to adjust it so we could put it somewhere else, so we could actually start interpreting the data. I was looking at it, and it was like, oh, you can also use like those survey tools that have enterprise solutions that would have been a lot cheaper and a lot lower risk. Because sure, at least one of those 40 HR people made a mistake in that. I'm pretty sure. So,
I guarantee it.
You're ruining your data. You are wasting a lot of money by not opening up for an external. It's only an employee survey tool, and it is secure enough to use it. But it was like, I was trying to actually mention it, and it wasn't even already no, we stick with Microsoft. So
there's oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's just another example of that what we talk about, the mindset, and to say, okay, let's step back and say, what is the best solution for what is actually the problem that we need to solve? And is that a problem that is based on technology or on behavior, collaboration? Is it both? Should the behavior come first and technology should follow, or should technology come first and should behavior be followed? And these are intentional questions that we always should ask ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a few kind of, we're sort of getting into our tips, aren't we? But there's a few kind of pitfalls that people can fall into. One is that what they do is they will just they'll look to solve a people problem with technology. And I think that's something that a lot of people fall into. And I've had people kind of go, oh, we need to maybe build an add-on to our performance process because people aren't engaging with it. So we need to make it harder for them not to engage with it. If your problem is engagement, making them complete a form they are disengaged with is not going to solve your problem. So you don't want to bring in technology for that reason. And so it kind of goes with your point about being intentional. What you need to do is go, what problem are we trying to solve? And is it genuinely a tech problem? The other thing I think that people don't do very well is they're not confident about their process of identifying and integrating technology. There's a disconnect between decision makers and the technologists in many companies. This is a tech company and it's slightly different, but if they're not a tech company, there's a disconnect. So what happens is something appears to be too difficult, appears to be a bit of a headache, or the technologists don't communicate it very well to the decision makers. And then what you end up with is this kind of clunky process and often not a very good original specification, because the original specification solves a technology problem. And actually what you want to make sure is that it's solving a business problem. Because otherwise you will end up with what feels like to the leaders and the decision makers a very expensive solution to something they didn't understand in the first place, and also probably won't be sustainable. They won't invest in it. The last challenge I see that comes out of having a lack of intention is really bad onboarding, because what happens is the metric for being from a successful launch of a new technology into an organization tends to be, did it land and did it fail? Like, was there system outages? Did the actual integration work? Did the various data feeds work? Oh, great, they're successful. Again, not going to the outcome, and so then you don't onboard people into how to use it. And I've seen this even in highly technologically advanced and fluent companies. Something as simple as Slack. Slack is such a powerful tool with so many different add-ons you can have, and so many different functionalities and different ways of using it and kind of best practice. And that very rarely gets communicated. And I find myself, not being a technologist, then sort of ended up doing pseudo training for managers and how they could utilize Slack to stay close to their employees. And it just the responsibility always ends up in the wrong place. So I think that's about knowing what outcome you're going for, and then onboarding people into technology and making sure that they know they have both the education and they're encouraged, they're incentivized to practice using it in that new way. Because we look at any technology rollout in the past, and often people ended up using it in one way, the way they learned first, and they just carried on using it like that. So even traditional techs like Microsoft Suite rolls out new functionality, and I've seen people using like really old ways of like importing pictures or whatever, because no one's ever bothered to onboard them into the new release. So I think that often is a side. You can do that without intentionality as well, but if you're really intentional and you pay attention to the actual behavior change you want, then quite often you'll end up with a much more successful rollout of whatever your technology is.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's also, so for example, if you say, okay, we see a lot of burnout, we see a lot of Zoom fatigue, we see a lot of people using a lot of asynchronous, people complaining that it's not efficient, we cannot meet, we meet the need for employees to be more flexible because they have all this meeting scheduled. So we want them to become more asynchronous. So we adapt, we put some technology in place to facilitate that. But then we should train the people to actually use it in a way so they can optimize it, they can leverage that tool. So I did some client success projects with startups that, startup mentoring, and then, I got interested in a solution, and because they were like, can you help us? Because you have an HR background in multinationals, and we want just to know how we can, because we see that they buy it, but then it's not used. So the employees are not using our solution. What's happening? And I'm like, no, there is just a problem, like a solution like Upflex, which is a platform where people can book office spaces, which is great. And it got communicated at that time. The first clients, they would send an email. And then employees would install the app on the phone. Probably 60% would install the app. The other 40% wouldn't even install the app. And they hardly use it, because if you're not in your culture, it's kind of expected. This is pre-pandemic also. If you're expected to show up on your desk, then you will never use that app, even if the company, the HR person was really open-minded and thought that's a great solution. They're just going to do that. So there is that whole training and behavioral change component, and it is about culture, management style, the collaboration, the organizational structure. You should all review that and be intentional, and then look in the landscape in your own company, what you need, what problems do you want to solve, find the right solutions. It's not easy, and then also get to know that landscape in the market side out there. What's happening, what's going on, and I think do not underestimate how difficult change is, especially if there's not a huge problem and people are really used to certain behavior. Then it requires like probably 2 or 3 years for people to change their behavior and really adapt to it. And that is what you need, because otherwise people will still be printing their emails 25 years later, because nobody actually taught them that you can be paperless and adapt things in another way. So that training component, and you have the learning and development background here more than me, so it's I would be interested to learn a little bit more about that. And then I also want to talk about that. Also, I want to, in that landscape area, no, you talk about the training part, and then we talk about the implementation part.
Yeah, so it's all training and behavior change and things like that. So I think if we look at how technology gets adopted when it's a commercial venture, when it's kind of B2C, when you're selling it to a customer, you get early adopters, right? So you get the people who sign up at the beginning. Slight difference in organizations is that those people might actually be very conscientious as opposed to just open-minded experimental, which is what you get as early adopters. Because in an organization, you'll say, as an organization, we want you to download this and use it. So those people are very conscientious, will do it, as well as the people who are kind of curious and open-minded. So you get those early adopters. And I think one of the things that we need to recognize is that doing change, this is a whole topic in itself, so I'll do the quick version. People tend to think of doing change as having an arrow of time that goes in one direction. So this Kurt Lewin approach of like unfreeze, change, refreeze, has got no basis in reality whatsoever. No change has ever worked like that in the history of anything, or maybe the very, very most basic, simple changes. Change is cyclical. So in the same way that what you would see in the consumer environment, where some technology goes out there, a few people adopt it, then they learn from that, the technology improves, they also learn how to market it, how to pitch different customer segments, they roll it out again, word of mouth, and it's a cycle to grow your organization that way. Same is true when you roll something out in an organization. You can do your training and you can reduce the inertia to adoption in a more controlled way than you can just out in the free market. But even so, you have to iterate, you have to re-communicate. It's kind of agile, but on a grander scale. And you have to keep talking to people and gathering feedback. You can't go, we've designed a fantastic solution. Now we're just going to communicate at people rather than with people until they all adopt it, because that will never work. And you'll end up with those high ratios, like you said, 60-40 or 40-60 or something like that. You have to keep talking to people. You have to keep reproving to them why the decision you made is a good one. And the more empowered the workforce, the more that's true, but also the more likely they are to listen to your arguments and actually pay attention, because they're assuming that you're doing it with their best interests. So I think it's general change methodology, modern change methodology, not old-fashioned change methodology, but with that slight technological lens, so people need to try it out, and also with the learning and education component, that people need to know how to use it to maximize the benefit and prove and reprove for themselves that it's something worth adopting. And Upflex is a great example of where there's a brilliant individual benefit that has to be sold to people as an enterprise benefit. Here's what it does for us as an organization and for all of you. But until you've downloaded that app and you've realized that they're willing to let you work from a local place that's fantastic and gives you, loads of options that it wouldn't do if you're working from home or going to a central hub, until you've done that, you've had that experience, you won't necessarily value it. So you kind of need that initial incentive and that initial encouragement to use it.
Exactly, yeah, and I really like the point that you say. It's about empowerment. So people have also in their daily, the way the choices that they make, they can choose to go to co-working space, or they can choose to make a video instead of asking everybody to get on a call. So it is also the team leads that is crucial that change. And we have to make sure that they are up to that task, that they have a high understanding, and that they sit the team down and say, okay, let's review the way we work here. What can we do with the technology that we have to actually make our lives easier, to become more productive, to become higher health, well-being, put our more flexible ways of working in place. And that is a crucial phase. And then what you would do from a more centralized point of view. So if you're HR, IT, or leadership team, what I hear is I found out two things recently. One of them is that a lot of companies that either apparently say two things. So either like, okay, we have so many solutions, we kind of lost in what we have. Another one was like, so we have the solution that is supposed to basically do everything, because there's so many solutions out there for small things. For every small problem, there is a thing. And then there is those solutions that are more holistic and that solve everything, but then people would only utilize like 20% of it, 30% of it. So then there's a lot of things that are not utilized. So that is a situation that we find in companies where I think that it's my earlier point. Make sure that you know what you want to change, be intentional about it, and look at the behavioral change you want to achieve, and the way you want the organization to look, and then find the tools that come with it. Or really say, we would really need this tool because this is like driven with our business model and like our production process. So people have to go adapt to that tool because it will be technology driven.
Very quick thing. Oh, sorry, go on. You go.
Just go on.
I was going to say, really quick thing about that adoption thing is one thing that I found is that lots of technology lots of people with a technology solution will sell you something based on the number of people that you have in your organization. And then they make the numbers look really good because your per person cost is very, very small. And at least two occasions in my professional career, I negotiated to change the contract based on active users. And the advantage of that is then it incentivizes that company to help you come up with strategies to increase adoption. And also what it means is that you don't feel the pressure often, assuming, depending on what the solution is, if everyone has to use it, that's different. But a lot of the time you don't feel that pressure from more senior people to make the most of the money that you've spent, because you've negotiated a contract whereby you're paying for what you use. And, okay, mine was often learning. So you'd find that some people just don't want to do online learning, for an example. Well, that's okay. If 20% of the population is active on any given month, then I'm paying for those 20% to use it. What I'm not doing is paying for the whole 3,000 people in my organization, 10,000 people in my organization, when only a very small percentage are actually engaged because they've got loads of other options for learning. So I think sometimes we do also need to get a bit savvy about what the technology solution is, how it integrates with what we do, and therefore what is the negotiation room within that contract to make it realistic, because some of these technology companies still work on the basis that you're going to enforce it, or they're going to cook the numbers in order to make it look attractive, and actually getting a bit data savvy and a little bit number savvy. And if you're not that person, then get someone who is, to try and ensure that you're really looking for the best deal for you, because it will reduce headaches further down the line.
Yeah. I think in general, you could say that, you want to look for long-term partnerships and not just like a product that you sell and it's a plug and play and that's it. So a company that approaches you in the way like, we are a long-term partnership, we want to learn and grow together. And if there's like, if we want to help you to become successful because that's actually what we are, and we happen to do that with this tool, then I think that would be, for me, that would be, that would be, chances are that would be shortlisted over the other companies. Yeah, and I was like, the other thing is that, and I actually want to, probably going to invite somebody in this kind of role soon for one of our LinkedIn Live, but the workplace solutions architect or the workplace solution person. So I come across that function more, and I was speaking to somebody from The Economist who does like HR innovation events, and they said we see a lot more people signing up right now for our events that are having that specific role to look at HR tech. So these are people that are dedicated, and it's so on the intersection of HR, change, collaboration, and IT. And they bring that all together. So I'm not going to explain too much about it because like we want a guest to explain what they actually do. But it is a growing number of people. So companies do see that there is a need. So it's no longer just HR and co-create, like working together with IT and flying in from very different perspectives. Then selecting a tool or talking about solutions, but there would be people out there finding and bringing the best solutions back. So have you come across that often, Trevor, this kind of
role? I haven't. You know what I've found is that someone sort of accidentally falls into that role. So I remember working for one company where the single sign-on page, because they were a tech company and every team was sort of empowered to go and find their own technology solution. So then the single sign-on page was just ridiculous. You had so many different icons on there. You didn't know what half of it was. The onboarding to the company for your core technology was good, but for all this peripheral stuff that probably would have been valuable to loads of different teams in the organization was really bad. And I remember one person took on this role, and it was this weird amalgam of HR, tech, and all that kind of stuff, where they looked at all the different role profiles and the teams that were in there, and they went out and had conversations with loads of heads of department and said, right, what stuff do they need, and what stuff would you like them to use? And they basically re-engineered the user experience of the central SSO page, the single sign-on page, to reflect the things that would require either frequent use or they were looking to drive adoption of within the team. And they also then went round and looked at where were their kind of technology conflicts, where was their duplication of technology. And what they did, which I thought was really good and requires interpersonal skills as well as technology skills, is they had a really open conversation with the various heads of department about like, what would the challenge be for you to change the technology you're using? Why have you chosen this? What's idiosyncratic about this that means that it's important to you? And then have the same conversation with the department that use the other bit of tech that does the same job or similar job. And then, effectively bring together these people to go, I think this would be beneficial for the business for these reasons, but it requires you to adapt in this way and you to adapt in that way. Can you do that? And they kind of accept a no, but then they'd often be a little bit more persistent and they'd negotiate a little bit. And overall, it saved a load of money, but it also just made that user interface and also the ability to move between teams, the ability to talk between teams, much, much easier. So these roles, I think, have probably been there even if they didn't have the title. And all that happened was someone who was a little bit of a polymath and was able to draw on all these different skills was the person that did that and then brought people together. So going back to your point, being intentional with the purpose of these roles, so they aren't pulled off into doing other things, and it allows them the freedom to do those sort of things really well, I think will be a lifesaver for an awful lot of companies. It'd be a really good way to spend your time and money.
Yeah, I think so. You can combine it, or like larger companies probably would have like more dedicated even team for it. But in smaller companies, you would say, okay, that could be somebody who is in organizational effectiveness, who is maybe, the collaboration or the agile advisor, but that has like a really strong tech background as well and knowledge of the market to find the right solutions. So there will be some switching in roles in that, helping that companies to adapt more quickly. And again, it is necessary. I would definitely get in those project teams a level entry person that is, from the Generation Z involved to make sure that they have some input about what they would expect in the way they would be working together. There's also like a lot of people that come from level entry. They are very tech savvy because they're digital natives, but they have a limited set of tools that they're really, really good at.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they're good in the collaboration in a team and using the tools you want them to use in the right way. So for those examples, I always look like, there's distributed tech startups that are fully distributed. They usually, they're very keen and intentional on using everything as good as it is. And if the solution isn't there, they develop it. Another thing, I came across some large companies lately that are developing or have been developing or are developing their own solutions for problems. But I know there are like dedicated third-party solutions out there.
Yes.
So of course, every company could have very, very good reasons to say we are developing our own solution. But I often see it's because they don't know there is a solution out there. They just find that problem, start to, and also being intentional. Are you really wanting to have all the solutions in-house developed, or are you looking for third party? A lot of even the best solutions that are now out there that existed and that came from startup world are now offering Teams integrations, Slack integrations. There are Zoom integrations, so you can see that they are moving to become more senior phase, more adult. So it's not just like somebody develops something on in their like on the kitchen table, and it's like it's high risk to implement it in your organization. They usually get a lot of they are VC backed up, and they have their integrations in place. They have the security in place because they know it's very important before they go and speak to larger companies to have that all in place. And I would also recommend, if you are, there are two philosophies. So we talked about the intention right now that feels it's very top down, but there is also philosophy, and do not forget the value of that. It should probably be a combination of all of that, but there is a top down, bottom up solution. So the philosophy is if our people, there is also, usually smaller companies, they say, well, if somebody starts to use something and other people start to adapt to it, then it kind of grows organically, and then we have it, and then it works. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for really larger companies, it wouldn't work that way. But there could still be on department level, business unit level, team level, saying, hey, if somebody finds something and they really want to experiment it, we allow it, because it could be a good way to find a solution that is better for us. A third-party solution than going to this whole project management system. So you could consider that, because it is a valid philosophy as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken a few times about the future of leadership being about people who can spot and accommodate emergence, and probably one of the most obvious solutions, if you don't want to get into kind of the woolly thing of sort of cultural evolution, things like that, one of the most obvious ways is to look at technology adoption. And I've seen in organizations, particularly teams like engineering teams or agile teams or something like that, where they have picked up a bit of tech, they've run with it. And I've actually been one of the people who's trying to roll out a new bit of technology. I go and talk to someone in the engineering team, going, I've been told I need to come up with a solution for this. They go, we've already done it. We've already got a solution for that. And actually, it's really, really useful. But there is that little niggling thing where you go, well, if you'd have just shared that with the wider organisation, you'd have saved me, I don't know, 2-3 weeks worth of work when I'm talking and gathering specifications from other parts of the business. It makes so much sense to roll out something that's already been adopted, or at least talk to them about their experience, so that's useful data. So yeah, I think that kind of idea of emergent technology within organisations, the really tech-savvy people adopting stuff, and it is so easy now to use a solution that's in the cloud. Not I'm saying you should, and there's probably some cybersecurity people who panic when I say that, but it's so easy for just going to go and find a solution and start using it, that you do need to start from that point of view. Again, change being done from the bottom up as well. Go and ask your organisation what they're using at the moment, how they're using it, how they're solving a particular problem. Be amazed how many solutions are already there with some use data that you can then bring into your change program.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so summarizing, there is a need to quick adaptation to do it really, really well, to make sure that you have the right solutions in the right context when it comes to the culture and the collaboration you want to create, and put the organizational change there as well, in terms of empower leaders, empower employees, and be open to experiments. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And you're going back to your point about kind of combining intentionality and experimentation is probably the right way to go overall. and you'd find that you'll be able to get the best technology in most of the time if you take those two philosophies and you have the right people in the right roles.
Exactly. So I think it's the end. We are running a little bit of time as usual. It's I think I should just change the time in the event because we always
45 minutes, yeah.
So next week we have a totally different topic, which is we hear from companies, from clients, from our members that they are struggling to find out what they need to do to make their employees come back to the office. So it's like the return to work programs. So just a very simple example, you would have asked people in lockdown and if they wanted to come back to the office and how many days, and then so many people would say 2 days, and other people would say 3 days. And then in reality is different because people always behave differently than they tell you they're going to behave. And so companies are seeing the value in, also bringing some people together on site. But then the actual behavior that people might not be reluctant or have other priorities and are not as much in the office as companies would like to. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to be talking about if there should be strategies to bring back people to the office, why, and how. So we'll be talking just quite open, and of course for every company this is different. So we generalize it, but we just we explore the whole spectrum, and then that will be valuable insights for wherever you are on that spectrum. Right?
Yeah, and anyone who can come in with their questions and challenges and that sort of thing. I think there'll be lots of people who are struggling with this at the moment.
Trevor, how's your ice cream? Is it melted yet?
Yeah, well, no, it's not melted. It's been eaten. I did that while we were talking before the broadcast. I was like, you didn't even see. It just took me 2 seconds, and I ate it.
Okay, well. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Any questions, any comments?
Thank you, everyone.
Then we always come back, and we hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.